And we're back with part 2 of my interview with Sara Zeff Geber, author of The Essential Retirement Planning for Solo Agers. Without further ado, here's part 2 of our interview. I'd like to wrap up with your quick thoughts on the importance of social networks and just why that's so important for solo agers in particular.
Sure. The one thing that solo agers risk is isolation. And in the last 10 years, there have been a tremendous amount of research on the perils of isolation and what isolation can lead to, which is a pretty good laundry list of states that none of us want to fall into,
Sure.
Which is a greater chance of both physical and mental decline. Isolation and loneliness are tied to everything from high blood pressure and heart disease to early onset dementia. It's quite frightening, and I think that solo agers should, above all, ensure that they aren't set up to isolate themselves. One of the things that happens to most people as they get into their 80s and early 90s is that they have to give up their driver's license. They just cannot see well enough, or their reaction time is not good enough to continue driving. It's just not safe. Now, again, solo agers don't have that adult child to take away the keys, so they're going to have to make that decision on their own. But that is a very isolating event. And once again, if you're still living in that suburban house in the cul-de-sac somewhere, generally the bus system doesn't come anywhere near you. So there you are, isolated, needing a friend or a relative or someone you pay to take you anywhere you need to go. Now, thankfully, we have some services these days that can fill in that gap a bit with Uber and Lyft and some of the ride-sharing services, but that's not the solution. That isolation is still very, very dire. It's a real risk for solo agers. So above all, I think that people need to develop a social network, whether it's through their living environment or through organizations that they belong to that will last well into their later years. And generally, it's tied to the living environment. I have to say, there's such a huge tie between where you live and developing a social network, especially later in life, that I think they're inseparable. And that's why I'm not a big fan of aging in place in a suburban home for solo agers.
All right. Good stuff. Sara, besides the book, Essential Retirement Planning for Solo Agers, available on Amazon and probably many other outlets, what's the best way to learn more about you and what you do?
I have a website, and you can get to it through two URLs, actually. The company that I started is called Life Encore, LIFEENCORE. So lifeencore.com is one way, and you can also get there by using my name, SaraZeffGeber.com. So both of those will lead you to my website. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and Life Encore has a Facebook page as well. So any of those methods will get you more information about me.
Cool. Excellent. Sara, thanks so much for sharing. This is really good stuff for a good portion of my clients and my listeners. So we really appreciate you jumping on and chatting with us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Anthony. Now, am I going to get a chance to ask you some questions?
Oh, sure. I'm ready whenever you are.
I would love to, because one of the biggest sticking points that some of my solo ager clients and the audiences that I have when I speak, and people come up to me afterwards and say, I just don't have anybody to list on my advanced directive. What do you suggest I do? I don't have kids. I don't have nieces and nephews that I can rely on. What do I do? And I have an answer for them in California, but it doesn't extend to other parts of the country. Here in California, we have something called licensed professional fiduciaries. what do you have in New York or other parts of the country that can fill in for that? What do you tell your clients?
So I read that portion of your book, and you have it pretty much right. In New York, we don't have a certified professional, but we do have attorneys who fill that role. The three main options in descending order of cost is banks, trust companies, then attorneys. Banks generally won't get involved, period, unless you have at least $5 million in liquid to invest with them. So that's not really for everybody. Trust companies have similar but lower thresholds, but often, still too high for many folks. A lot of folks have their wealth tied up in their homes, so just not usually a good fit. So you're down to attorneys such as myself. I do this quite often. It's my honor and pleasure to give some peace of mind to folks who want to feel comfortable with who they've listed to handle their affairs when they pass. And it's pretty much all I do. So, without, at the risk of sounding, we're pretty good at administering estates and settling trusts.
Well, so let me take that to an individual case. You have someone who's now in the hospital, and someone has to make a decision about whether to implement a feeding tube or a breathing tube. Who does that? Is that you?
I have done that. So my preference is to sort of crawl before we walk. We'll start off with a basic estate plan and probably name me as the executor or trustee, as the case may be, which is really, I haven't done anything yet because I'm just named in the event that you pass. And we do annual calls just to sort of make sure, kind of feel each other out, make sure I'm understanding the trajectory of your wants and needs. And maybe over time, I would feel more comfortable filling that role, the healthcare directives and things like that. I'm not really comfortable doing that right off the bat until I've gotten to know you a bit. And I think that should be a two-way street, that feeling.
I can understand that. The biggest fear that I have for my clients and for the people that I advise in any capacity is that they don't end up a ward of the court.
Yep.
Because if they end up in guardianship or conservatorship, then they really open themselves up to total strangers making decisions for them. And in a best case, those total strangers at least have their best interest in mind and aren't there to take advantage of them, which has happened in many cases before. So I'm hoping that more states will do what California and Arizona have done and start licensing these professional fiduciaries that's their role.
Yeah, the number one, the feedback that I get when folks find me and hire me or ask me to be their executor is that it was really hard to find me. Like there weren't many options. So there's definitely a lack of a marketplace for folks who need this.
Boy, I wish we could do something about that. I'll have to think about it.
Very good. Any other questions, Sarah? Yeah.
That's my big question for you, because that's where I get stumped when I'm working with people that are from other states.
Same here. When I have a client who moves, it's hard for me to find folks as well. California, I understand, has a blossoming industry, but or professional guild, whatever you want to call it. But other states, it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. There's really a big hole there that needs to be filled.
Okay. So yeah, thanks again for jumping on. This has been fun. I mean, maybe not fun, but interesting. Our topics,
I thought it was fun.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Anthony. I really did enjoy it.
Thanks to you, Sarah. And thanks everyone for listening. Take care.